See, that's how you get the fans hype. Sit on the couch, have a few drinks, a few sodas. I mean, promised them that I wouldn't be too biased. Best idea for anybody listening to this: pick everything that I'm picking against. Welcome back to Tyler's Tailgate Talk, back for episode 10 and week 10 of the college football season. We got a big week this week, not huge blockbuster games, nothing that'll top the headlines, but some good games this week is just some filler games after the college football playoff rankings have officially been released this week. Just to get an idea of where teams are at. We might see a few upsets this week to shake things up, but there's not really any big, we won't see any two top 10 teams playing each other this week. So, but to get us started, yes, the college football playoff rankings have been released, and they're weird. They're weird, and the college football playoff committee definitely took a lot of things into consideration that we weren't preparing to see, but we'll get into that in a minute. Just some quick score updates from last week. We did have some big games last week. Obviously, Georgia staying undefeated, top in Florida. Cincinnati staying undefeated, taking down Tulane. Oklahoma going to 9-0 against Texas Tech, beating them convincingly. Ohio State defeating Penn State as a 5-20, beat them by 9. The big game of the week, my game of the week last week, I hyped this one up and it delivered. Kenneth Walker Jr. goes off against Michigan as Michigan State beats the Wolverines 37-33. 3 touchdowns from Kenneth Walker, so huge performance from him. 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns from Kenneth Walker as he goes off. Oregon took down Colorado as expected. Wisconsin took down Iowa as expected. Auburn took down Ole Miss. Auburn was favored as 8.8 ranking behind the Rebels, but they take down Ole Miss 31-20. Notre Dame tops North Carolina. Mississippi State tops Kentucky. The big game, Wake Forest had a big game against Duke. And then finally, Pittsburgh falling to Miami was the big one of the week, the big one that raised the eyebrows. Miami takes down Pittsburgh 38-34. That was pretty much it. We had a good BYU and Virginia game to cap off last Saturday night, 66-49. But other than that, those are your scores from last week. We did get the college football rankings on Tuesday night, and they were, let's just say they gave us a talking point. I mean, we've got, to start off, we got Georgia at 1, Alabama at 2, which was not expected. Michigan State at 3, Oregon rounds up your top 4, and then Ohio State sits at 5, Cincinnati at 6. That's your top 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 goes as follows: Michigan, Oklahoma undefeated, Wake Forest undefeated, and then Notre Dame to cap off the top 10. Some interesting things that we did see is Cincinnati going from 2 in the AP poll on Monday to now 6 in the college football playoff ranking. And, the committee basically just said there's no way that a group of 5 school could possibly make the structured college football playoff as it is. I mean, you have Alabama in there at number 2 right now, sitting right behind Georgia. You're saying that Alabama has shown this year that they are the second best team in college football, right behind Georgia, who's miles ahead of everybody else. But putting Bama at 2 with a loss to an unranked Texas A&M at the time, putting Michigan State at 3, they are undefeated, and then putting Oregon at 4 with an unranked loss to Stanford, and then throwing in Ohio State in there at 5, who I think deserves to be in the top 3 at least. And then you get Cincinnati. So you're kind of getting into a position here where Cincinnati's going to hope for they need a lot of losses to happen, and it's a lot of losses that you're going to need a perfect world for. I mean, the Alabama situation at 2, that'll work itself out. They do play Auburn to wrap up the year. Heck, I mean, they play LSU this weekend. That's not a guaranteed game. It's a rivalry game. It's not a guaranteed win. But they have Auburn to cap off the year. Auburn's a good football team. And then if they win out and beat Auburn, then they play Georgia in the SEC championship game. So if they lose to Georgia, that gives them 2 losses, and that'll work itself out. And if they beat Georgia, then, well, they deserve to be up there. Michigan State still needs to play Ohio State. The Big Ten is definitely gonna get spicy. I mean, you got a lot of teams up there: Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Hell, even Wisconsin they're not bad. So you got teams up there that can take down Michigan State. Just pulling up the standings real quick in the Big Ten. Michigan State they've got Purdue this weekend, which could get interesting. That's a Purdue team that is known for taking down these top teams and could very well upset Michigan State. Then they come home, play Maryland. Then they go to Columbus and play Ohio State. And that game is going to get good because Ohio State's playing for their season. They go down, that's 2 losses for them. But if Michigan State goes down, they're not a guaranteed top 4 team. So, and they're going to lose out on the chance to win that Big Ten championship if they do go down, which could result in them missing out on the college football playoff. So back to Cincinnati, the college football playoff committee just gave a big middle finger to the group of 5 schools, basically saying there's men and there's boys, and the group of 5 schools are just a bunch of boys playing in a men's league with the Power 5. The SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac-12, and the ACC. Those are the teams that can compete for championships, and everybody else is just placeholders in whatever ranking you want to see. So Cincinnati, I definitely expected them to be in the top 4. Obviously, a ranked 6 is just disrespectful to everything that they've done. I mean, Desmond Ridder has put himself into the Heisman conversation, not necessarily a favorite, but he's in the conversation. And they've shown year after year that they're a powerhouse school. Now, again, the playoff committee looks at what have you done for me lately? Who have you beat? And they want to look at your resume. Who have they beat? Well, they beat Notre Dame. And besides that, they haven't beat anybody else. So you can look at that. That is one of the driving factors that I would think led to Alabama getting that number 2 ranking, as you've now got 7 SEC schools in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings, which is just insane. I mean, wins against Mississippi State, wins against Ole Miss. It's now looking like a better loss to Texas A&M, as Texas A&M is now ranked 14. Taking into account that they have Auburn on the schedule, I mean, the SEC is just packed in here in the top 25. So something that they could attribute to that. Now, it is a conversation of why Alabama was ranked number 2. A lot of people don't like the ranking, but I will say this. If I were to hold a gun to your head and you had to put Alabama up against any other team in that top 25, and I said, this is your last chance. If you get this pick right, you'll live. If you don't, if your life depends on it, and you took Alabama versus any other team in that top 25, who are you taking? I mean, you have to take Alabama against every single other team. So That's my understanding. That's my thought process of making sense of why they're number two. Should they be ranked second? No. I think Alabama, a fair ranking for them would be four at the moment. They've they haven't beaten any spectacularly great teams. Haven't beaten a top 10 team. I mean, Florida was up there at one point, but they've shown that they weren't anything this year. So, but that situation will work itself out. Um, Another thing I did want to address was the other group of five schools. Um, the AP poll that came out on Monday had a UTSA team sitting at 8-0, ranked number 16 in the country. They had Houston coming in at 7-1, ranked 20. Coastal Carolina sitting at 7-1, ranked 21. SMU and Louisiana ranked 7-1, ranked 23 and 24. The College Football Playoff Committee just totally disregarded the group of five and basically said, and like I said before, you're boys and this is the men's league and you're just not there. No matter who you've played, no matter what your record is, you will never be able to sit at the table. Heck, you can't even park your car in the parking lot to come in for dinner, let alone anything. So that's why we saw Cincinnati at 6. Just the disrespect for everything they've done in the past few years, saying, don't care what you've done. You're a group of five and you don't belong with the big boys. So we did see Fresno State make number 23 in the college football playoff, probably after their win over SMU. So we see them ranked 23. But other than that, you can just it's just all Power Five. The other thing that caught my eye was Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma has had a really weird season. They have been at the top in the APs. And I mean, the current AP poll has them at 4. So, I mean, they've been at the top all year. If you look at just wins and losses, they're undefeated. So they have no reason to show you why they shouldn't be up there. But then you take a deep dive into the games that they've played. Week 1, a 5-point loss to Tulane. Okay. Starting off slow. They did beat Western Carolina 76-0, but that is Western Carolina. A 7-point win over Nebraska, a 3-point win over West Virginia, all of these unranked. 6-point win over Kansas State, still unranked. Texas was ranked, big rivalry game, beat them by 7. Almost lost that game too. Unranked TCU, unranked Kansas, 2 wins. Kansas wasn't necessarily a runaway game. I mean, they only won that game by 12. Kansas was playing them the entire day. And then this weekend, we finally get to see the real Caleb Williams, and they can't even blow up. I mean, a 31-point win over Texas Tech wouldn't necessarily call that a blowout in today's college football world. But, you know, they've seen the College Football Playoff Committee is seeing what they've done without Spencer Rattler and what they've done with Spencer Rattler. And in my eyes, it's 2 totally different teams. But they're playing this as it's one team, which is how they should play it. It's one team, despite whoever your quarterback is. This is the team that's getting ranked. And they haven't had all of that convincing wins that Georgia's had, that Alabama's had, that Ohio State's had. And Oklahoma, because of that, is fallen down in the rankings now to number 8. And they're going to have to see an uphill climb to get into the top 4, and in a situation where a Big 12 championship might not even do it. An undefeated season in a Big 12 championship might not get them into the college football playoff. So, I mean, an interesting move there by the committee. And then you see Wake Forest there in a weak ACC schedule, sitting undefeated at number 9. They've shown glimpses of success and showing that they can be a powerhouse and just blowing out teams, but still not convinced in that sense because the ACC has just been terrible this year. I believe there's only 2 Pitt ranked 25, so 3 ACC schools in the top 25 compared to 7 in the SEC, probably 6 or so in the Big Ten. So, and then there's that. So that's my view of Oklahoma. I think they should have been higher. I think it should have been maybe Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan State 3, Alabama 4, Oklahoma 5. Oh, you got to throw Cincinnati in there too. See, it's tough. I mean, there's no easy way to do it, but it's one of those things. There's a reason why we see this so early, and it's that it's going to work itself out in the future. We've got these big games coming up on Thanksgiving weekend. We've got the conference championship games where everything will get figured out. Now, what are we looking at for this week? Well, this week, there's not too many real games where we might see shakeups in the rankings. The one that I can put my finger on would be Wake Forest and North Carolina, if anything. It's just a situation where a lot of these schools are getting ready for the end of the season. They're kind of putting together that schedule where, we're going to play at the bottom of our conference. You see the Alabama playing LSU, Missouri playing Georgia, Ohio State playing Nebraska. None of these really close games. Cincinnati playing Tulsa, where College Game Day is this weekend. Don't even get me started on why they went to Cincinnati for this. Plenty of other good choices, but no real big games. The big one I would say is Auburn and Texas A&M. Auburn ranked 13, A&M ranked 14. We're going to get a good sense of what those two schools are. This is a big game for the top. And I say that because if Auburn wins, and the only real threat here, the only real stipulation this could cause is a shakeup in Alabama's ranking. Georgia's not going anywhere. And other than that, we don't really see any SEC schools at the top. So this can only affect Alabama. If Auburn wins, that'll drop Texas A&M down. And that'll decrease that win value in the Texas A&M win, because that'll put them at 3 losses. But at the same time, that'll put a win in Auburn's column over a number 14 ranked school, which will be a value win for Auburn. And then you've got them playing Alabama on Thanksgiving weekend in a few weeks, where if Alabama beats them, they're in to the SEC championship. And then possibly, I would say that there's a world where with Alabama ranked number 2 right now, I would say that there's a world where Auburn needs to be Texas A&M. Alabama plays Auburn. Obviously, both those teams going in with 1 SEC loss, 1 overall loss, because you can't have Alabama losing to New Mexico State. But those 2 teams playing each other, Alabama winning convincingly, beating Auburn convincingly, not necessarily a blowout, but I would say 10 to 25 point game would be convincingly. And then going into the SEC championship game in Atlanta, Alabama plays a close game. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. Auburn beats Texas A&M. Good win for Auburn. Auburn beats Alabama. No, I'm wrong again. Never mind. Alabama beats Auburn. Alabama goes into the SEC championship game with 1 loss. I was right before. Alabama goes into the SEC championship game in Atlanta with 1 loss. Let's say they play a close game against Georgia and lose. Maybe it's a 3-point game, a 5-point game, somewhere in that one possession range. That would be their second loss. Now, we've never seen a team make the college football playoff with 2 losses. And I think that what we're going to see, if all that shakes out, how it will, like I just said, I think there's a world, the way the committee has set it up, where we might see the first 2-loss team make the college football playoff, and it would be Alabama. Now, there's a lot of things that have to go right outside of the SEC. I think Oklahoma going undefeated, winning the Big 12 would get them in over Alabama. I think Michigan State winning out would get them in over them. Maybe even a 1-loss Michigan State might get in over them if that game is in the Big Ten championship. There's a lot of things that need to happen that have to happen if that were to happen. But I think the committee is setting up where there is a world where it can happen. But that's a story and a discussion for weeks from now when we actually get more in depth into the rankings and they actually start to actually mean something. But let's get into the discussion for this week because we got some good games this week. Let's get into my locks, tailgate locks for this week. Go check out the merch in the store. It's awesome. Worked really hard on it. Came out really good. So go check that out. Tailgate locks. Now, I didn't have a good week last week. I'll say that. We went 1-3 last week. Took the win with Wake Forest -16, beating Duke by 38. We got the loss with Ole Miss and Auburn with Ole Miss +2.5. Cincinnati didn't cover the 26 against Tulane, and Buffalo lost, so they didn't cover either against Bowling Green. This week, I'm feeling good about this week. I think I've got another 4-0 weekend down pat. As I actually forgot to put in one of these. Okay. First off, Georgia taking on Missouri. I'm going to have the under on this game at 59.5 now. Why the under? Georgia's defense is stellar. By far the best in the country. Missouri's the bottom feeder of the SEC. Nothing special. It's just another game that Georgia needs to get through on their schedule. The Georgia defense is unbelievably good, but the Georgia offense is concerning me. So when I'm looking at this game, I see Missouri maybe scoring 7 points max. And then Georgia's offense, you might see them in 35 to 40 range, which would put that total of about 45-ish, give or take a few points. So that's a 15-point difference from where the over-under is at. So I'm going to take the under on that game. I don't see that much more scoring. I think this game is going to be a blowout. So Stetson Bennett at least will get taken out early, and we won't see that much more out of Georgia's offense. Second game I've got is Wake Forest, North Carolina. Wake Forest worked out for me last week, so I'm going to ride the hot hand. Wake Forest is actually an underdog in this game, taking on the Tar Heels in North Carolina. Wake Forest is getting 2.5 points. I will take that with the Demon Deacons +2.5 against North Carolina. You can lock that one in. Third game I've got number 16 Ole Miss versus Liberty. This is going to be a good game. I can see a world where Liberty pulls out the upset here. Liberty's got a great offense in Malik Willis. Definitely somebody you're going to be seeing on Sundays in the near future. Ole Miss kind of shaky game last week against Auburn. Matt Corral did go down with an injury, did come back, but that's still lingering injury that we could worry about. But at the end of the day, these are two teams that can score unbelievably high scores. And and two very high-powered offenses. The over-under here is 67. I'm going to take the over on that. I think this game is going to be two teams scoring in the 40s, maybe even the 50s. I mean, this is going to be a shootout for the ages. And the last game I've got, I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Alabama LSU, number 2 ranked Alabama taking on LSU in Tuscaloosa with yours truly in attendance. Alabama favored by 28.5 points. I'll take that 28.5 against LSU. I mean, Alabama's defense has just been coming alive lately, especially after that loss to Texas A&M. They killed Mississippi State by 40, killed Tennessee by about 28. That looks like, 28 points. I think this game is going to get ugly real fast, especially after what happened last time these two teams played in Tuscaloosa with Joe Burrow and company ruining the party with Donald Trump in attendance. I think this game is going to get ugly in the favor of the Crimson Tide. So those are my locks for the week. Let's hope those hit big, because God knows I need it, as I'm currently currently sitting at a 13-10 record, so not great. But it's time to do better. Anyway, thing you've all been waiting for. My game of the week. Now, I thought long and hard about this, but my game of the week is going to be Wake Forest versus North Carolina. I think these are two very high-powered offenses with Sam Howell for on the side of North Carolina, and for Wake Forest, Sam Hartman. Howell's got a lot of weapons out there, like Josh Downs, Ty Chandler out of the backfield. But this Wake Forest team has just been showing up and showing out recently. Like I said, 8-0, undefeated. North Carolina coming in 4-4, 3-3 in ACC play. North Carolina favored 2.5. This is going to be a great game. Like I said in the locks, I've got Wake Forest plus 2.5. I think they're going to go 9-0 now. But this is going to be a great game. You already know it's going to be a great game because my games of the week hit every single time. I mean, you cannot disappoint. Last week, the Michigan State-Michigan game, I mean, that was a thriller. The week before that, whatever it was, it's a great game. This game, I guarantee you, will not disappoint at all. So those are my tailgate locks. That was my game of the week. We've got a big week ahead of us. A lot of good games, some games that'll kind of drag out and we'll get tired of, but a lot of games that'll tell you exactly who teams are, and a big week for the college football playoff rankings, as we'll see next week, where these teams will fall. Again, could see another shakeup if one of those top teams goes down unexpectedly, but I don't see that happening at all. But with that being said, I will see you next week. Have a good Saturday. Have a day, have a fun one. Enjoy the shit out of college football, like always. We'll see you next Saturday, where we've got a big weekend coming up with Thanksgiving right around the corner. So I'll see you next Friday. Adios.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the rest of our channel and subscribe. Make sure to follow our Instagram and maybe consider subscribing on Patreon for our bonus content. You can only find it there. I promise it will be well worth it. Thanks.